The most impactful statement that was circulating yesterday may have not come from Donald Trump or Kamala Harris when it comes to electoral impact. That was this post from RFK Jr.
Hey, everybody. A lot of people are asking me if they live in a red state or a blue state, should they still be voting for me? What about swing states? The answer is easy, no. No matter what state you live in, you should be voting for Donald Trump. And let me tell you why. That's the only way that we can get me and everything I stand for into Washington, D.C. and fulfill the mission that motivated my campaign. Right now, free speech is under withering and relentless attack in America and across the globe. But at least we still have enough of it here that you can watch this video. We can still run an opposition political campaign. Well, in a lot of countries, you can't do that anymore because the state now controls the media. The state censors the internet. Brazil just banned Twitter because Elon Musk refused to censor user speech. Kamala Harris says that Musk better behave himself or he will, quote, lose his
privileges and it should be taken down. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
She thinks, and the Democratic establishment thinks, that free speech is a privilege. Well, you know and I know that it's a right. And if Kamala Harris is elected, the powers behind her will quash that right. They're already halfway there. It will be too late by 2028. Once we're in the grips of totalitarianism.
That was an issue you thought didn't come up last night. But the point here is RFK Jr.'s appeal to his voters across the board in swing states and not swing states. And you talk about moving the needle a point or two. Perhaps RFK Jr. is the candidate or former candidate best positioned to do that. Yesterday on the issue of immigration, there were a couple of different exchanges, but they were a bit repetitive. Other than this moment that could have been, but wasn't.
Why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
And then she went on.
I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Mm-hmm. And Trump picked up on the rally piece of it. This was the most obvious missed opportunity of the night. Picked up on the rally piece of it and focused on that rather than focusing on these specious claims about that quote-unquote bipartisan legislation that was killed not by Trump, but by popular reaction once people got the particulars and heard from experts like our next guest on how ineffectual that would be. And it could have been an opportunity to not only set the record straight on that, but then to say, you know, in addition to that, this legislation came year 3 of this administration, even if it were effective, would have been effective, which it would not have been. 3 years ago, they undid all of the things I did by executive order. They undid those border protection policies by executive order. And this is what has ushered in 10, 12, 15, 20 million, who knows? This is why there are 320,000 unaccompanied minors that are missing. They talk about compassion. 320,000 children that are missing because they've invited people from around the world to drop off their kids at the border or put them in the hands of coyotes to take across the border illegally. So I was solving the problem in my term. Then they blew open the doors and said anybody can do anything they want on their own terms, whenever they want, and we'll pick up the tab, both in terms of human cost as well as taxpayer dollars. But that moment was missed. For more on that, we're pleased to be joined by the expert I alluded to, Mark Morgan. He's former U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner. Mark, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, thanks for having me. And again, like always, I'm listening to you. I'm actually taking notes. You don't really need me. I mean, everything that you just said on, what could have been said, and really it summarizes exactly what the Biden-Harris administration did. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said, Dan.
Well, I mean, give us your reaction to Kamala's position, because I mean, what else can she say? She falls back on the fact she was a prosecutor and she allegedly prosecuted transnational criminal organizations. I think we're still searching for the seminal cases that she prosecuted that fit that description. So that's one thing. And then, this legislation, and now she's open-minded about a border wall after wanting to have a conversation about abolishing ICE not so long ago. How, in addition to that riff I went on, what else would you advise Trump to say when it comes to what they're going to say in response to this vulnerability they have?
Yeah, so first of all, the quote bipartisan piece of legislation, if you summarize it very well, it died because of popular reaction. I wrote that down. I like that phrase, Dan. If you don't mind, I'm going to steal that. That's why the bill died. The bill died because, first of all, 5 Republicans voted for it. Doesn't make it bipartisan, number one. Actually, more Democrats, or at least the same amount of Democrats, voted against it than Republicans voted for it, number one. Number two, it was not a serious, meaningful border security bill. It would have done absolutely nothing. In fact, it would have codified a certain level of lawlessness and violation of the law at our border before any actions would have come in. And then what it did do is it was a red herring. It talks about resources. The issue of our border is not about resources. It's about bad policy. It's about the 94 executive orders, as you said, that the Biden-Harris administration enacted that destroyed and dismantled the network of tools, authorities, and policies we had under the Trump administration that led to the most secure border in our lifetime. And the last thing that I'll say is, not only because of popular reaction, I was one of those. I called everybody I knew on Capitol Hill. I actually talked to Langford before the bill was published, and I told Langford and I told every individual on Capitol Hill this bill was a disaster, and I worked hard to get this bill killed. Guess who I didn't talk to about it? Donald J. Trump. So it's a big lie, just like his involvement in Project 2025. Right. He hasn't been involved. He hasn't read it, but yet they keep pushing it out there, and it's a big lie because they think it sticks. Okay. The other thing that I would say is if they actually wanted this issue, the border security, chaos, and lawlessness to be an issue, then why last March did the House pass H.R. 2? We do not talk about enough about this, and I wish the President Trump would talk about H.R. 2 more. It was the strongest piece of meaningful border security legislation that's ever been passed in our lifetime. It actually provided a policy pathway forward that would have ended it. That was passed last March. You know who killed it? Chuck Schumer in the Senate. You know who said that they would not vote for it? Kamala Harris and President Biden said he would veto it. If they really wanted it for an issue, then why did they pass H.R. 2 and support it? It's a big lie. It's a big scam they're trying to push on the American people.
Well, what's in H.R. 2 that you like or find attractive?
Well, that's the question. We don't have enough time to talk about every detail, but let me talk about a couple of very important details. One is it ended catch and release. That's the big issue right now. When Harris and Biden came to office, they ended a couple of significant policies. They ended all of them, but a couple of significant ones were the Safe Third Country agreements we had with all three Northern Triangle countries, as well as the Remain in Mexico program. The reason why those two key policies, especially the Remain in Mexico program, is it ended catch and release. If you stop releasing those that are coming to our country illegally, guess what? They stop coming. It's common sense. And so H.R. 2, besides, ending the loopholes in the asylum claims and process that they can abuse, it also ended catch and release because it mandated programs and policies like the Remain in Mexico program be reinstated. And at the same time, it not only addressed the loopholes and policies, but it also added resources as well. It added more Border Patrol agents. It mandated construction of the border wall. It mandated more technology. So it addressed both the policy issue and the resource issue under the overall deterrence and consequence strategy. The Langford bill would have done none of that.
Yeah, it would have been nice to hear last night. Also, too, does Trump seek your advice and counsel, the advice and counsel of Tom Homan here, in terms of focusing his attention on the big things when it comes to a topic in which you guys are experts? I mean, like when he got the deportation question, how are you going to deport 11 million people? Well, I'm going to do it one at a time, but I'm also going to do it in rank priority. And so people in this country who have not only committed a crime by coming here illegally, but then also committed an additional crime and are still here. We know this. We know this is a problem. These are all preventable crimes. Laken Riley and Rachel Morin and Kayla Hamilton and so many other young people who are dead now, those were preventable crimes. And so I'm going to focus on those criminals in this country illegally, and they're going back to their home country. That's going to happen, and that's where I'm going to focus. Just start there, and then maybe Kamala wants to agree with me on this now too. But instead we got sort of more rambling. So I mean, I could just do you guys have that interaction with him or his staff?
Well, so I get asked all the time, and look, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but my standard go-to is that I don't talk about the conversations that I have with the president or the team. But here, what you just said, I agree with though, Dan, is there's a great opportunity, and to back it up with stats, right? Say that's why we have ICE, right? The very organization that she wants to disband, right? The very organization that she referred to the men and women as equivalent to the KKK. Mm-hmm. The organization that even under the Biden-Harris administration, the first 3 years, arrested 163,000 criminal illegal aliens, including 4,000 murderers and 8,000 gang members. So, yeah, I'm 100% in support of a widespread nationwide removal process that takes criminals, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, aggravated felons, and gang members and animals off the streets. The kind of animals, like you said, that savagely raped and killed Rachel Morin, animals that savagely raped and killed Laken Riley. We could go on and on. Yes, that is a process and a policy and a movement that is 100% support of removing these animals from our city streets across the country. Absolutely 100%.
That's the piece, too, that just roils me is, and Tom Homan is great on this as you are, because you have the details. And look, it's not a resource issue. It's a political will problem. Right. The idea that this is some sort of impossibility, the way that it's cast by the press, and it's always the interrogatories are always posed with sort of that skeptical tone. How is this even possible? How did we get here? It was possible to get here, so it's obviously possible to go back to where we were before we got here, and this is the way you do it. And I just wish there would be some sort of, commonsensical, conversational, basic conversational descriptions of what is possible.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, again, I agree. And look, under the President Trump administration, I was there on the front lines. We had that, and I'll tell you, to your issue about the political will, a big player in this is the Department of State, because we have some countries like, wait for it, China, that refuses to take back their citizens, even though every single person in the intelligence community in this country says that China represents the, quote, the threat of our generation, yet we've had 50,000 Chinese nationals come across our border illegally, 95% of them single adult males, and then China says, nope, we're not going to take back our own citizens. But under the Trump administration, because, again, I was there, and almost on a daily basis, we were having conversations with the State Department, and they were applying pressure and leverage and political will, as you just suggested, on these countries that forced them to take back their own citizens. That's part of the strategy. We can't do this. Even under the Obama administration, they removed hundreds of thousands of criminal illegal aliens. This can be done.
You know, I mean, I just for our collective enjoyment, I mean, this is the Iron Lady, 40 years ago, talking about this very issue in the UK before the UK decided to lose its mind like the rest of Western Europe and destroy itself.
How can she say at the end of her chapter of British politics that she can justify many people in a constituency such as mine being relatively much poorer off, much less well housed, and much less well provided than it was in 1979? Surely she accepts that is not a record that she or any Prime Minister can be proud of.
Mr. Speaker, all levels of income are better off than they were in 1979. But what the honourable member is saying is that he would rather the poor were poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That way you will never create the wealth for better social services as we have. And what a policy! Yes, he would rather have the poor poorer, provided the rich were less.
Well, and then she goes on. That's not the full clip I was looking for, but then she goes on to talk about, look, if you can't return people in this country illegally to their countries of origin, then we're going to have chaos. And chaos is exactly what ensued in Western Europe with their multicultural agenda, and it's what we have here now.
That's exactly right. Look, I've said a long time, and Danny, you and I have been talking for the past 3.5 years, or if not longer, and you don't have to be border security expert to understand what you just said. It's just about common sense. And I really look at there's a couple of stools that are very important. We can secure the physical border. We can throw resources there. We can have the policies to back it up to actually achieve a physical secure border. And I think we are inching that way every single day on the Trump administration, most secure border we have. But if you don't have strong interior enforcement, i.e. the consequence element of that deterrence and consequence strategy, it will fail because the cartels and the illegal aliens themselves will just get better at sneaking across and avoiding apprehension, knowing that if they do get in, then they're going to be able to remain here for the rest of their lives. So you have to have a multi-pronged strategy that secures the physical border itself, has policies that backs that up and allows that to happen, but you also have to have the political will, policies, and resources to make sure you go after everybody that against the rule of law, against our sovereignty, remains in our country illegally. That will be the ultimate deterrence tool and consequence tool, that if they know that if they get here by hook or crook, they're not going to stay. I promise you, you're going to see illegal immigration reduced. More resources are back on the front lines to do their job. They're going to interject more drugs, criminals, national security threats, and national security is going to be better off for it. Hands down, common sense.
Mark Morgan, thanks so much as always. Appreciate it.
It's 7 a.m. WIND Chicago.
He's not sure there should be a second debate. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. As a former president.